I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships, creates language for what motivates us, and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram is a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram Ninja.
Hello.
I have, for 2 years, read down a script to intro our podcast. I started the podcast just now without I couldn't find my script, and then I realized I knew the whole thing. This has never happened before.
See, you sounded a little hesitant in the opening, and I was gonna ask you if you wanted to re-record it, but now I know why, and I feel like that's a win right there.
Let's go. It's a mirror, I think. I don't pay attention to things I say. It's Ron Burgundy over here.
Yeah, right. You just say it over and over again.
Speaking of great pop culture stuff we're going to be doing in the future, can I tease where we're going here coming up?
I mean, you don't need my permission. You can do whatever you want. You're an adult.
I want you to be in control of your podcast. I suppose you are in control of the podcast. You'll just erase this in post-production.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to do two fun things coming up. First, we are nearly to Election Day 2022.
Oof.
And TJ and I are going to tackle voting. Now, here's the thing. We're not talking about who you should vote for, nor are we going to talk about partisanship. There's something really interesting, I think, about talking about your type and how your type comes to the voting process that's just worth naming.
Yeah. We're going to try really, really hard not to talk about parties or people or partisanship like that. We're going to work really hard, and we're going to try really hard in the editing process to cut out anything that might have slipped through. But also, it's possible that some stuff will make it to the final cut. We're going to try really hard not to.
Longtime listeners will know through our snarky jokes where we probably land on these fronts. That'll be 1 second. We're going to do the follow-up to our villain series. One of the problems with the villain series, self-confessedly, is that it took 6 months. A lot of pop culture of 6 months, and may have been, you kind of kill people with that, right?
Sure, yeah.
Unless you're really into those movies, like Clowns Like You and Me.
Right.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do the opposite. We're going to do the Heroes series coming up, but we're going to use the Heroes episodes as kind of filler between our larger deep dives into Enneagram topics. So after every series.
Those of you who skip all of our pop culture stuff, you'll only skip 1 or 2 episodes at a time now, not months.
It's also the case that some of you can guess this if you got into our villain series. When we do Heroes, what we're going to do is treat our stress numbers. What does it look like for us in stress to go high? And in that space of going high in your stress number, we think that the best term for that is heroism. Yeah. There's something about like your most heroic self comes out when you go into places of stress and yet perform, act, think, believe, feel in ways that, overcome the adversities in your life for the sake of others. It's really worth talking about. The way that we're going to tackle that, we're going to use a handful of characters from pop culture, and we're just going to highlight these are some of the characters that we love and adore, who we type as, the type that we're talking about, and we're going to showcase kind of pivotal scenes in those movies. Notice how this character going to stress, how they wrestle through the stress, and why we're so captivated by these movies and their heroism. So that's what we're going to do.
That's going to be a fun series. I'm excited about that one.
If you want to tease for that, you can always visit our Instagram feed. I'm trying to get feedback. Nobody wants to bite. Had one person today who challenged whether Tony Stark was a 3. They were not happy with this designation. So I copied and pasted my notes, which was way too long of a comment in response. And but it's a slightly edited.
We love you. We appreciate you. And you're definitely wrong. Tony Stark is a 3.
I don't think this person was a listener. And if you are a listener, much love.
Yeah, we love you. We appreciate you. You're
the only person that commented. I was really thrilled to see somebody post. And Chase posted. Chase had a handful of things because Chase is the man. All right, man. Well, we're getting in the low side of affect today.
Ooh.
This is our last episode on how we connect. And now we're going to talk about like the shadow, darkest side of affect.
Yeah.
It's another one of those things like, how do you define the low side of affect? We kind of have circled this for a long time. And what TJ and I have just kind of come up with is that since affect is about connecting with other people, connecting with the world, sometimes that doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen in kind of an unhealthy, shadow-inducing way. And so that state of not connecting with the world looks like something like isolation. And it's isolation that is brought on by bad choices. It's isolation that's brought on by not rising up to, the high side of your motive and stance, as we talked about last week. This is going to be the natural trajectory for a lot of us when things break and we don't handle it well.
Yeah, last episode, the high side, we got to talk a lot about how we can respond, like what good things are available to us in different places of our type that help us respond to that lack or that rejection in healthier ways. And this is all about the average to unhealthy ways that we respond when people reject us, when people don't give us the love that we are expecting, and even I think that a lot of unhealthy interpretation is going to come out here. It is going to produce these results as well. Like when people don't do things that we expect them to do, regardless of their actual side of it. When we respond in unhealthy ways, it can still be contained in this low side description.
That's it. Yeah. C.S. Lewis has a book on heaven and hell called The Great Divorce. Only a sliver of a picture of hell in that book. But in it, those who are in hell, it's like a ghostly world is what he pictures. And it's as though everything is very, very, very thin. All the ghosts can walk through walls and all the rest, They can also construct mansions out of nothing and live in these mansions. Well, all those who are pictured in hell have traveled, like essentially try to get as far away from everyone else as possible. So you have people who live like literally hundreds of thousands of miles away from anyone else, and they've constructed some home there, and they're all by themselves. Nothing wrong with being an introvert. Many of us flourish because we're introverts, but there's something else about just the total desire to never connect with other human beings. This, as a human being, the function of a human being is wrapped up in our connecting with one another and flourishing together. And so but there is something dysfunctional. There's something unhealthy. There's something, dare we say, kind of hell-like. If our entire lives were lived in utter isolation, self-imposed isolation, you never have to grow. You never have to love another person. You never have to, do anything that isn't primarily self-serving. That's a bad place to be. Yeah.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, I think there's a really big difference between the isolation desired by an introverted nature, which is like not necessarily needing other people. Like the idea of an introvert is that you get your energy from being alone, and at its most basic description. And I think that's really different from intentionally choosing to close yourself off to other people. That's the isolation we're talking about.
So in the same way that we did last time when we did the high side, and we talked about how our affect and the high side of motive went together. affect and the high side of our stance went together, so too this time we're just going to look at low side of our stance, low side of our motive. What does it look like for us to be in excess? What does it look like for things to get really spoiled and find ourselves in isolation when the love that we crave and the way that we connect with others just isn't reciprocated? So that's where we're going.
Yeah, if you've gotten this far and haven't figured out that you should probably go back and make sure you listen to everything else that we've already done in this series, you should probably stop now and go back and listen to the other parts, because we did lay down a lot of foundation in the previous episodes.
Truth. Big idea that we keep coming back to is the idea of lack. That is, each of the types try to connect to the world through giving something, giving a gift, creating a space, or offering some ideal. And that's how we connect with the world. So 2s, 5s, and 8s offer either strength, help, or wisdom. 3s, 6s, and 9s all create spaces of success, calm, or security. 1s, 4s, and 7s all offer these ideals into which they're pulling folks. And this is how we connect naturally in our type. This is what we offer. When it's not reciprocated, or when it's not accepted, that is, we're calling that lack. Lack is the place where relational pain comes into play, where hurt comes into play. And it's from that spot that we need to talk. Because if things are going great in relationships, you are offering this gift, you are offering these spaces, then you're going to be connected with the person or people in front of you. But when that doesn't happen, that's when we're really invited to what seems to be a lot of our lowest points. So that's set up. How are we going to deal with lack? So we're going to start with motive. 2s, 5s, and 8s all are going to be offering a gift. We've talked about this in the past, that when the gifts of 2s, 5s, and 8s aren't received, what happens is their underlying feeling raises up. 8s will get angry at the world. 2s will feel a sense of shame at the world in their place. And 5s may feel a sense of fear at the world. Because there wasn't a connection, that's kind of like the fruit, the feeling, I should say, that raises up. When we did our shadow series, here's the move. When you and I did our shadow series, we said the first step towards disintegration, the first step towards each of the types kind of going to their lowest point, it begins with fear. Yeah. And for all the types, motive, the low side of our motive, is it starts with fear. And it seems to me you can see fear all over each of the types as they're wrestling with lack. So notice this with 8s. 8s are going to get angry at the world, the specific person or this employer or your kids. They haven't received the strength you're offering, and an anger rises up. But the thing with 8s, when their strength is rejected, that there's actually something else I think going on in the heart of an 8, and it is they fear being controlled. Yeah. If somebody had received your strength, that's a place of connection. If somebody had received what you had to offer, that's a place where you find some stability. But if your strength wasn't received, you're vulnerable, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that strength represents the strength to protect yourself and to make sure that you are the one in charge of your own destiny. And when that offering, when you say, I offer this strength, this is what I have, and someone says, no, thank you, that response, it has so much to do with the fear, that fear of vulnerability, the fear of someone else taking control over you. If they don't want your strength, then what do they have that is bigger, more powerful, whatever? Like there's a way to interpret this message that says this is now something that is threatening me.
See a ton of 8s whose closest relationships come from that foundation of this person received my strength.
Yeah.
And an easy one to kind of point to, and we've said this in the past, romantically, I see a ton of 8s who are connected to reactive types, specifically 6s and 2s. But specifically with 6s, that 8-6 relationship, you'll see a lot of the 6 longing for someone strong to be in their life, that they can, unite to, depend on, that gives them support. The 8's going to feel that. The 8 who is giving their strength to the 6 is going to feel their strength going out, as it were.
Yep.
Is going to know this person is receiving the gift I have. And that creates that connectedness. Imagine the opposite to that. I'm offering my strength to this person. It's not received. It's like it's going out. Intuitively, I imagine 8s can feel like I'm trying to give you something. Mm-hmm. It's just not happening. Then the feeling of vulnerability is there.
Yeah. And there's a sense of if any kind of challenge to that strength, any kind of to even questioning that the position that's offered by the 8, to the 8, it represents that you don't trust me, which means that you don't think that I am a person of my word. You don't think that I'm strong enough. You don't think that I'm capable enough. Like there's that level of, like, trust is a big thing there, especially in the 8-6 relationship. That when that strength is challenged in any kind of way, that communicates very clearly to the 8 that something about them is being rejected and challenged. Like they are in control of their world, and you are saying they're not. And this is an affront. And of course, 8s are going to interpret all of that as anger, but it makes them feel like they aren't safe because you don't trust them.
Yep. I suppose, and this needs to be said, if we don't care that this person didn't receive our strength or our wisdom or whatever gifts we're giving, you can just move on past this.
Right, of course. There's no relationship there.
That's it.
Yeah.
But if it's the case that the lack of connection, the lack of relationship really does matter in a person, for the 8, it's going to materialize as anger, and that anger is going to be directed outward, and it's going to raise up all of these sorts of issues.
Right.
And once those fear issues take place, then we're on the slippery slope,
right,
that we depict in our Shadow series, where now the intensity of experience desired by 8s is going to start to rise up. The feelings of vengeance are going to rise up. Those are the natural, outcomes of really allowing that fear of being controlled and being vulnerable to get a real anchor.
Yeah.
That one felt a little trickier. The 2 is, I think, a lot more straightforward. 2s are going to offer their help, going to offer their love. When it's not received, it's going to materialize in their heart as shame if they really care about the person in front of them. And it's going to elevate that fear that they have of being unwanted.
Right.
And that seems a little bit cleaner to me, but you can see how quickly you can go from my love's not rejected, clearly I'm unwanted.
Right. Yeah, the 8 one is really interesting because it's all about vulnerability, but that's not what the 8 is going to be putting forward. The 2 is a lot easier because they offer their help, they offer their care, they offer their genuine concern and like filling your needs before you know to ask. And when that is rejected, that's the only thing they have to offer. So obviously you don't want them around. And it turns into this interesting cycle of shame where they feel shame, and at the unhealthiest spaces it pushes that shame outward and onto you. This is where the sort of martyrdom thing that is associated with 2s comes from. It's because I suppose I'll be the one to take care of this. That, like, I remember hearing my mom say things like that. My mom was a great example of a 2. And this using guilt as a weapon is because they feel shame about the fact that you don't want them enough to take care of, to receive their help and to take care of them.
Yep.
And they put that onto you because that they don't know how to handle it. This is the next way to connect is to keep you close by making you feel shame.
You notice that fear moves right into the sin of pride, and that elevated sense of self and elevated sense of all that one has done for the others in their life.
Yeah.
And now you're at the low side of motive.
Yep. Not being wanted.
5s are also going to offer gifts of wisdom. when they aren't received, there's a fear at the world. What's interesting here is that the fear is for fives is of being incompetent. If other people aren't receiving the good wisdom, these pearls that you have and that you're offering, those pearls might be suspect. You may be getting this wrong. You may not be informed. Other people clearly don't want to connect with you on that front. I suppose that's where my mind went. Do you have thoughts on fives
or
and
even
their wisdom not being received?
That you haven't studied enough to be prepared.
Yeah.
Like I think about dance moves a lot with fives. I don't know why, but like you have to learn how to dance, and like there's really there's a lot of particular moves like ballroom dancing, not just like dancing at a club, but like ballroom dancing. You have to learn the steps of how to ballroom dance before you can dance, and typically fives want to study everything there is to know about ballroom dancing and probably some other types of dancing as well, and they want to know all of that before they practice it. But you can't learn dancing without practicing.
Sure.
And so the idea of like offering your information and having that lack, having people reject that or not receive it even, or even people taking the information and using it improperly, what that communicates is that you have something that other people don't want, or your information is faulty. Like you have not studied enough, so when you step out onto the dance floor, you look like a fool. So the fear that comes out, it pushes into fear of everything that's out there and causes a retreat.
Yeah.
If everything out there is to be feared, because obviously I don't know enough to know how to dance, I'm going to step back and learn more about how to dance.
That withdrawn, isolating move, that's a greedy move. It's a stingy move. And when that fear materializes in the heart and mind of a five, moves into their sin and fixation.
Yeah. And I think a special note needs to be made here that there's also a sense of, like, if someone takes the information that you offer and uses it improperly, part of that fear is that if you share anything else, then they're going to use that improperly too. Right. So yeah, the greediness really comes in at that point and says, okay, fine then. I'm not going to share because you messed up the last thing I shared. And now I can't trust you.
I suppose looking at the list in front of me, the rejected wisdom is about the head for fives. Rejected love is about the heart for twos, and rejected strength is about the body for eights.
Yep.
And so that the rejection is coming from their center.
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see that in all the other types too.
Yeah, I bet that's true. 3, 6s, and 9s are pragmatists. They offer spaces for others. The 9 is going to offer that calming space, that peaceful space to others. That's how connection happens. I'm going to create these spaces in which you can dwell, I can dwell, and things are harmonious. When that doesn't happen, again, materializes as anger in the heart of a 9. The space was seeking to be constructed, correct? And the fear for 9s is that of losing connection. Yeah. So apparently I haven't created a space where there's harmony. What one is probably feeling then is a loss of connection because apparently the space wasn't harmonious, yeah?
Yeah, and I think that there's... I think there's also it's not just loss of connection, but I think it's also like the thing before connection. It's like connection can't happen here. I was desiring to have a peaceful interaction, and you were rejecting the peace I'm offering. This kind of space, and the fact that you don't want this means that we can't be connected in the first place.
I should have said that 3, 6s, and 9s attach,
right?
And that's exactly what's taking place.
Right.
You offered the peace and calm space. It was rejected, so there wasn't an attachment.
Right.
And so then the fear emerges.
Yeah.
Of losing connection.
Yeah. And like 9s want everything to be peaceful and harmonious and for all of us to get along and be together, and not like, together in the same room, but we should all be able to work together and live in community and go where we want to and be people, be humans. And when someone rejects the peace that I'm creating, when someone doesn't want the type of harmonious living that I'm offering, there is no connection there. There is no attachment, because that's the thing that I have to offer, is a peaceful space.
Yep. Again, as we showcased in the past, that fear of losing connection is that first step towards the shadow for nines, which eventually leads to that sloth in the heart and lethargy in the mind.
Yeah.
It's what if they didn't embrace this connection, I'm going to just step away from all of that.
Yeah. I want everyone to get along. And the pragmatist side of me says some people are not going to get along and some people are not going to like me. And so it's okay that you're over there and I'm over here. And realistically, at the core of me, I kind of want everyone to get along. And the fact that you don't want that means I just don't care about you.
Yep. Got some resignation.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of that pointed at myself. Like that's something that's important for 369, is that it's not just pointed outward, it's also pointed inward. If people don't want what I'm offering, then obviously what I'm offering is not good enough or just doesn't matter to people. And I'm now pointing that energy, that connection, that lack of caring at myself as well. Part of why I'm so tired all the time.
Takes a lot of energy.
Yep.
Threes are going to try and create spaces where everybody feels successful. When that doesn't happen, it's again that rule of your underlying feeling emerges and there's shame. And as we've talked about in the past, that shame's going both ways. It can be felt inwardly. It can be felt at how the world perceives the three. The attachment, the connection with others is based on, I was going to create these spaces for us to succeed together. If that doesn't happen, then I might not have what it takes. I might not have real value. I may be worthless. Mm-hmm. And the fear for threes, I think, comes in real cleanly again at that spot. If the space isn't created, clearly you might be worthless. And that is a fear threes want to avoid.
Yeah. And also like that feeling of worthlessness, but also the sense of failure, I think really feeds that. Because if this space is not successful and if other people don't perceive it as successful, then obviously it's a failure. Mm-hmm. And because threes identify so much with this sort of image that they are putting out into the world, if this space is a failure, I am a failure, and that means I have no value.
But especially, I suppose, when there's the lack of relationship. The three was trying to offer the space that was successful. Nobody stuck around. This three is left isolated. Then what do you do?
Right.
You know?
Right. Then you failed. You're worthless. People don't care about what you are capable of.
The interesting move for threes here, as we've showcased the shadow side of threes, is threes don't stay in that spot.
Right.
They start moving.
Right.
And eventually the deceptive side of the heart of a three is going to start telling their inner life some stories about themselves. May spin things, reframe things in the world out there. Mm-hmm. Try to elevate their worth in their language, even if it's the case that they're lying about who they are.
Right. Yeah, I had an interesting conversation recently about someone who I don't think is a three, but one of the things that we said about this person is that like they have to win in every single conversation. Like they're smart, they're interesting, they know a lot about a lot of interesting topics, but every single conversation is a battle and they must win. And part of this person's strategy to win is to make sure everyone else loses. And in a similar way, I think that when threes get in this really sort of destructive place, this really unhealthy sense of needing to protect themselves from the worthlessness that they feel, from the shame that they feel about their worthlessness, they'll start pushing their failures onto others. It's not that I failed, it's that you failed to set me up correctly. It's that you messed up these things and I couldn't have succeeded in this space. And like that sort of outward push. And it is, to a degree, it's certainly rewriting their own history. And it depends on the health, I think, as to how thoroughly they believe their own revision.
Right.
You know?
Reading, there was a biography that came out yesterday about a famous person whose father died. It was a big event in their town, and he got up to give the eulogy at his father's funeral, and it was all about how successful he was in that city. And everybody who had come to the funeral thought it was the most bizarre thing they'd ever seen. Like
Sure.
kind of image is like, it's a funeral for your dad, and you're talking about your resume. That's isolation.
Yeah.
That is loneliness. That's not connecting. And I'm just trying to cast an image.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what came to my mind as you were talking there, is like, oh, hey, I just read about this.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So like the shame being an internal force.
Yeah.
The 3 really wants to get away from that shame because shame represents failure. And so they push it outward into the world.
That's a good line. 6s likewise are creating that space of safety for themselves and others. If that doesn't materialize, that's anxiety and fear.
Yep.
Both at the world out there and at their own abilities. Again, the attachment isn't there. I tried to create the space. I didn't connect. So the fear is there because there's no attachment to others.
Mm-hmm.
And that invites the fear for 6s, which is lacking support.
Right. Yeah, there's the word fidelity is really important to 6s, whether they know it or not. It's like I do these things for you and you do these things for me. We are connected because we take care of each other. I take care of you, you take care of me, and that is on a whole host of fronts. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dollar for dollar exchange, but it's that they're creating this space where everyone is secure and secure in their relationships, and the lack of reciprocation there, even more than fearing the lack of support, they also they turn it inward. They have not done enough. They have done the wrong things. They broke the rules. They didn't follow the order. They messed up somehow, and now you are not part of their support system. They've failed to do what you needed, and now you were failing to do what they need. And the connection, the attachment for them that has so much to do with having a space where they feel safe. And when that's gone, they're not safe because you aren't protecting them because they didn't do enough.
Right. Yeah. And you can again see the slippery slope towards self-doubt in their hearts materializing as either cowardice or recklessness.
Yeah.
Bang. Those are the pragmatists. The idealists are 1s, 4s, and 7s. All are going to try and pull people into their ideals. This is how they connect with the world. When those ideals aren't realized or when others won't be pulled, that's going to be an invitation again to their underlying feeling of anger, shame, and fear. For 1s, it's anger. What's interesting here is the 1 is going to have ideals about how the world should be, try and pull others into them. When that doesn't happen, they get angry, but the anger isn't at the world out there necessarily. First and foremost, when it's really toxic, it's about themselves.
Right.
You're not good enough to pull people into your ideals, and that's about their own abilities. It's about it invites their fear. Their fear is of being corrupted. Somehow you're tainted. That's why people don't want to do stuff with you.
Right. Right. You failed in the first place, and by in the first place I mean in the core of your being. Something is wrong with you that people don't want to join you in the things that you're trying to create and build and perfect, and
leads towards the sin of wrath. That wrath is at themselves, and the fixation of being just hypersensitive to any failure that they may have, and that can be that doom loop. All of these types have that doom loop.
Yeah.
Getting stuck in their sin and fixation. Yeah. That's how it is for 1s. Fours likewise have ideals. They're romantic ideals. If somebody doesn't want to join you, it's going to be a shame, not an anger that materialize. So clearly, there's something defective about me that keeps others from wanting to connect with me in the romantic ways I desire. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a lot like the ones, but I think with ones, it's that being fundamentally flawed, and I think with fours, it's being fundamentally out of place. Like that sense of envy, that it's rooted to this idea that I'm missing something, that I don't belong here. That like I said, it's a lot like ones, but it's much more introspective, I think, than ones are going to give themselves credit for. And I think ones just stop at I'm flawed, and I think fours go, oh, here's the details of the things that I'm missing that prevents me from being part of the cool kids, prevents me from having these relationships, that prevents me from connecting to people in ways that they don't throw away.
Go get on the Spotify and turn on "Creep" by Radiohead.
Yeah.
You quoted, I don't think intentionally, like 3 of the lines from "Creep." I don't
was
belong
very
here.
unintentional. Yeah.
I'm a creep.
But I do want to say that, as great of a 4-ish anthem as I think "Creep" is, it also sort of celebrates it in a way that I think is not. Yeah, we could talk about that song forever, but yeah.
You'd mentioned the other word that this is going to invite envy in their heart.
Yeah.
The comparative nature of fours comes out here. And envy, when it moves into the head, becomes melancholy. Mm-hmm. And living in that space, if people won't connect to me because I don't belong here,
because the melancholy sort of slips in and accepts your fate.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this is where we're going to be.
Yeah.
There's the stance as well. We kind of said this with nines. It's almost like a elevation of the withdrawn, like that very negative side to being a withdrawn type there.
Yeah.
All sorts of great things about being withdrawn. That may be a real struggle.
Yes.
Sevens are going to be pulling people into the next adventure. Got an ideal place to go. When that doesn't happen, and we talked about this in the past, that can be isolating. Sevens can do the adventure on their own.
Right.
But sometimes the ideal isn't hit. Like you want to do the things, and yet they blow apart in front of you. Mm-hmm. And now you're stuck.
Or even you have an idealized version of how relationships are supposed to go, or this is one of the interesting ways that we really see the cross with ones and fours, because especially in relationships, I think that sevens have this vision of how great things are going to be. And so even normal relational struggles will represent a lack to sevens. And I think the unhealthy response is it is that I'm going to be stuck here. I'm fearful of what this relationship represents, and it's turning inward to the things that fear gets expressed inward.
Yep. Yeah. Fear expressed inward is probably about dark stuff that you haven't dealt with for a while.
Yeah.
No, it's down there, but if you can outrun it,
then you don't ever have to deal with it. It's fine.
It's where the stuckedness can become a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about the fear of deprivation on that front for sevens?
Yeah, I think that part of how sevens deal with that fear of being deprived, of having the things that they need taken away from them or not in front of them in the first place. The part of how they respond is to make sure they always have a chance, is to make sure they don't get stuck ever. They don't want to be in hard conversations. They don't want to face the unpleasant feelings. They don't want to be in places where they might not be able to get another scoop of ice cream. They always want to make sure there is an opportunity to get to the things. Like, the grass is always greener, and I want to make sure that I have a direct path to that grass on the other side. I don't necessarily need to go there right away, but I need to make sure that I have a foot in the door to make sure that I can get there.
Right.
And part of how I really think that part of how this whole thing comes down when sevens are facing that lack is to double down on getting the opportunities. I think sevens are the ones that are most likely to run away from hard parts of relationships and to just push out and say, okay, since we're stuck in this hard place, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Low side of motive.
Yep.
Big idea. Again, like your fears just going to invite some of the lack of connection can really give an opportunity for your fear to take a hold.
Yeah.
And so again, I kind of teased this, but if you want to do more work here, we did a series called Shadows a little less than a year ago. And we spend seven episodes kind of walking through, what that looks like for our low side to really come forth. But broken relationships, those invite fear. Mm-hmm. Fear invites our worst self.
Yeah. I do want to say one more real quick thing about sevens. I think there's another response as well, is that
sure.
when they experience lack in the idealistic relationship they are looking for, they get stuck in a pit.
Oh, sure.
The fear of deprivation takes over.
Yep.
And completely, it not only isolates them, but it builds this well for their inner self that they get stuck in. This is one of the places where the most destructive depression comes for sevens.
Can't outrun that,
right?
Like relationships
are well.
Yeah, even if you're in the relationship, even if you are traveling or whatever, you're still in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something you can outrun.
Right.
Yeah, I think on that one. Brings us to the low side of stance. We've said this a handful of times about the low side of stance, that when things are bad in stance, you're unbalanced. And the language we use is having a repressed center. So all of us naturally have we're either thinking repressed, action repressed, or feeling repressed. What happens, it seems to me, when relationships don't go well, our repressed center gets inflamed. It's like we become even more unbalanced.
Sure.
So starting with the 2s, 5s, and 8s again, they're offering the gift. Here's my strength. Here's my wisdom. Here's my help. It's not received. For the 8, it gives an invitation to become even more feeling repressed.
Yeah.
I don't care about their feelings or my feelings, and I'm pushing on to the next thing.
Right.
I'm going to expect rejection. 2s, 5s, and 8s all expect rejection when they don't when they experience lack, and that's the place that they end up living. You got thoughts on the repressed center for these?
Yeah, I think that we saw this a little bit in the motive, in the low side of that motive for all of these types. That there's a way that motive sort of feeds. Like this is kind of like the next step. It's like I like that thought of the repressed center being inflamed, because I think the next thing that sort of comes out from 8s is that like they push down, they do more work to close off their own feelings and don't care more about how their behavior affects other people. Like it's like pushing into that lack of engagement with their feeling center, because like they expected rejection, you rejected them, and that is going to make them expect rejection more. And it's a disengagement from the feeling center.
Same way, 2s are going to disengage from the thinking center.
Mm-hmm.
You have not received my love and help. 2s will get reactionary, get very emotional in those spaces, as we kind of talked about, in terms of it's not tempered. Their behavior isn't tempered by thinking in those spaces.
Right. You can see like the big feelings come out bigger here. And almost an inability to sort of understand that like it might not be someone rejecting you, but maybe they don't need the thing that you're offering. And because your thinking center is shutting down further, you aren't processing that there might be a reasonable explanation for why you were feeling rejected by these people.
Difficult spot to be in because 2s, 3s, and 4s are going to get so much of their value from the attention they gain from others.
Right.
And so, when that goes into that spot where I can't process that mentally, all you have is action and emotion.
Right. Right. And there isn't a way to balance those two things and bring them into their proper place.
Yep. Paired with that is the elevated, well, I'll just expect to be rejected. Yeah.
Yep. And because I expect to be rejected, I'll help more.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. How does that play out? That feels like those are opposites, but they're not.
Because it's a lot like the sort of the codependence problem that 2s have, and when all you have is feeling and doing, and you're not processing like what place you should be serving, the reaction that comes out of it is they don't love me because I haven't done enough, and
right.
And because they're rejecting me, I need to do more.
2s earn love. That's a primary way that they are in the world to
right.
satisfy their motive.
Right.
And that just gets enhanced in that space.
Yep.
Real similar to the 8s, I suppose, on this front. The 8s are gonna be aggressive. They're gonna take hold of agency.
Yeah.
Their expected rejection is gonna materialize in that way if they're relationally hurt.
Yep.
Well, I will just take control more
Yep.
of myself and my relationships and the rest.
Exactly.
Going to see that, I suppose, with the 5s as well. The 5s are going to be offering the insights, knowledge, wisdom not received, invitation to withdraw and just not engage their body. There's going to be a severe withdrawing for more observation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. This came out. I feel like I said it sort of previewing where we were going with this, but like if you spend a ton of time studying your dance moves and you step out on the dance floor and your partner is like, you can't dance, the response for 5s is to leave and go study dancing more. Like go learn more. Obviously I wasn't prepared enough, and you've rejected me because the thing that I had to offer wasn't enough for you. And so I'm going to go get more. But I have to do that by retreating.
Yeah, and notice it's a retreat for more knowledge as opposed to a stepping forward into action where you might actually learn in a different kind of way.
Right.
In a very physical kind of way, in a participatory sort of way.
Right. The way that 5s combat their fear of incompetence, of not having enough information, of not being prepared is by gathering resources, by gathering information. And when those offerings are rejected, they step back to gather more.
Notice the severe tilt to one side here. If you're not balanced and you just push so far to one side, you surrender thinking, you surrender feeling, you surrender action. Mm-hmm. That just creates, that's a bad place to be.
Right.
And that's what needs to get exposed here. The low side of stance looks like being unbalanced in these ways.
Right.
For the pragmatists, for 3s, 6s, and 9s, again, they lack connection because that space wasn't realized. One of the things that has come up in our conversation is that produces a sense of what we call dread of their repressed center. 9s will dread action, 3s dread their feelings, and 6s dread a form of thinking. So walking through this real quick, for 9s, you're trying to create this space of calm and peace. That's how you're connecting to the world. When that's not embraced by the other or even warred against by the other, there's an invitation to action, yeah?
Yeah.
I need to talk to this person.
I'm going to have to face this conflict. I'm going to have to do something about the way that this is disrupting my peace, and I'm going to have to enter into some kind of unpleasantness with the person that I'm trying to maintain connection to.
This can happen in families. It can happen in jobs. Obviously, it can happen in romantic relationships. The place I see it with TJ most frequently, I suppose, not very frequently, maybe once a year, but it's TJ has staff, and sometimes staff have to be confronted
Yep.
because something is broken, and that's a very difficult spot to be
Yep.
in for the sense of dread of having to have that conversation.
Yeah. It's
worth naming.
it's awful. There's so much wrapped up in I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. I don't want them to quit. I don't want to make them feel like I don't trust them or like them or have them on my I don't want them to be on my staff. And unfortunately, I also know that this is something that I have to do, and that makes it that much worse.
You know what you could do is you could just detach.
I could easily just attach. I'll just deal with it. Kick that can down the road, man.
Expecting rejection for 2s, 5s, and 8s, and detaching for 3, 6s, and 9s. We've talked about this as fruit. Sometimes the fruit can be very healthy. There are times you need to expect rejection. That's a good thing. There are times you need to detach. That's a good thing. Sometimes that's not a healthy move.
Right.
And you know it's unhealthy because it's coming from that spot that you're acting out of imbalance with your repressed center.
Right. Right.
So
there's a really big difference between me not engaging a conflict that won't matter in 2 hours and me pushing off a hard conversation for months because I don't want to have it.
That's it. Yeah. You'll notice again that low side, I want to call this strategy, but where 8s are going to take hold of agency, 2s earn love, and 5s withdraw for wisdom. The 9 is going to withdraw. That's their stance. They're going to withdraw for peace.
Yep.
And that can be done in a very a low way.
Yeah.
That's what that looks like. I'm detaching. I'm withdrawing for peace. It's all coming out of the fact that I can't shore up my repressed center.
Right. Right.
I suppose a bit of health just halfway through here. It's if you do stance work, broken relationships, and especially relationships that lack what you need as a person, given your type, you need certain things. You need some people to receive what you're offering. If you come into those relationships and you've done stance work, it makes rejection or relationships that don't connect much easier to navigate.
Right.
And those are unavoidable. It's just unavoidable to not have some broken relationships.
Right. Part of living. Dumb.
3s are creating that space for excellence. Gonna dread having to have emotional conversations with that person. And partially that's because they don't want to have to get in touch with their own feelings about the matter.
Right.
Much easier to move to the next thing and win than to have to deal with this overly emotional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important, like in the same way that like the dreading action has so much to do with the inner turmoil as well as the potential conflict out there. The dreading feelings has so much to do with not knowing, not really wanting to enter into the messy space of this other person's emotions, and also not wanting to enter into the messy space of my emotions. Yep. I don't have time to spend on the feelings that it takes to deal with this, so I'm going to do it later.
And notice there's the fruit. It's gonna the 3 in that moment can detach, and that's an unhealthy move.
Right.
They could detach and just say, I'm going to go somewhere else and win, in that other job. I'm going to go win in that other relationship. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go win in that other city.
Yeah.
And all of these are just, running away from what's actually needing work within you.
Right.
It's elevating your repressed center.
And I think this is an interesting place where if you know a 3 well enough, you can also see the 3s detaching from themselves in order to pretend through solving this problem. That detachment has it can easily be pointed inward as well.
Yep.
In the same way that 9s will just stop caring.
Exactly.
3s will detach from their feelings and just go along in the best possible way to succeed at the conflict.
Yep. It's one of the, I'm sure we'll find more language for this, but for 3, 6s, and 9s, it's the direction is both ways.
Mm-hmm.
For 2s, 5s, and 8s, it's always outward. For 1s, 4s, and 7s, it's inward.
Yep.
Real interesting on that front.
Yeah.
6s, creating those spaces of safety, are going to dread engaging their heads. This is a tricky one for me. I would love your thoughts on it. I don't know how to put language to this one.
Partly because we all, like, the only possible way we ever process anything is through our thoughts. So if you're dreading your thoughts, then how can you possibly understand anything? And that's the trick. They don't understand.
The trusting.
They get stuck in this cycle of not being able to trust their thoughts.
So if I don't trust my thoughts, I actually have an aversion to even doing the hard work of getting my head around things in the first place.
Yeah. And chaining lives here.
There you go.
Yeah. The needing. We also talk about another triad where 6s respond to conflict with emotions. They want to tell you how they feel, and they want you to tell them how you feel, and they want to know that there's some understanding there. And part of that is tied to this place where, because they dread their own thoughts, they need other people to validate their thinking. They're outward processors in part because of this.
Yeah.
And it even becomes this thing where they're afraid to say their thoughts out loud because they don't trust them enough. But they have to say their thoughts out loud because they don't trust them enough. And it becomes this this is one of the places where this is one of the hardest things about being a 6, because not being able to trust your own thoughts is a very difficult place to live. And so the outsourcing of thinking, the way that 6s sort of glum onto some type of hierarchy or authority system, that when 6s are in a relationship with an 8, part of that is because the 8 will take control and 6s will let them.
Yeah.
But when that lack happens, when the fidelity is not felt, it becomes this cycle of not thinking and not trusting the thoughts that are happening and trying not to think. And so they act on their feelings and like they become emotional, and also they're just going to do the next thing.
Never have put I've seen this list so many times of detach. I'm always thinking that it's detaching from the stuff out there. It's not. It's detaching from within. Mm-hmm. The 6
it's
is
both.
detaching. Yeah, it's both for these. I suppose I hadn't thought of it on the inward way.
Yeah.
The 6 is detaching from their thinking. So all I need to do is work hard enough to earn the fidelity of the people around me, and I'll be fine. I don't need to think for myself.
If I follow the rules, then I don't have to worry about where the rules come from.
Right.
Yep.
Same thing with 3s are detaching from their emotions, and 9s are detaching from action.
Yeah.
And all that's an inward thing.
Yeah.
Bang.
Hey folks, we're going to pause here and we'll pick up with the idealists, the 1, 4s, and 7s next time. We'll also talk about how lack can cause us to hold back our best selves and the good we have to offer, further isolating us from others and the rest of the world. And we'd love to engage with you on Twitter or Instagram if you have any thoughts about this episode, and you can always find links to those and our other materials at aroundthecircle.org. There you'll also find a link to our Patreon, which can help connect you to our online groups meeting every other Sunday. We do love those stars and reviews on our platform of choice, but the best way you can help us with our podcast is to share this with someone you love. I'm TJ Wilson, he's Jeff Cook, and who you aren't isn't interesting.